Admiral Kethara stood on the bridge of the Celestial Dawn and watched her world die. The massive viewing screen showed space filled with dark shapes that moved like hungry insects. These were the Devourers, and they had come to finish what they started long ago. "Admiral, we're getting reports from the outer colonies," said Commander Veltar. His voice was quiet, but she could hear the fear underneath. "Nexus 7 has gone silent. The mining station at Kepler's Rest stopped transmitting an hour ago." Kethara closed her eyes for a moment. Nexus 7 had 3 million people. Kepler's Rest had families, children, workers who just wanted to live peaceful lives. Now they were gone, consumed by the biomechanical monsters that ate everything in their path. The Devourers had appeared without warning 6 months ago. They came from the dark space between galaxies, traveling in ships that looked like giant metal parasites. These creatures didn't just kill people or destroy cities. They ate entire worlds, breaking them down into raw materials to build more of themselves. "How many worlds do we have left?" Kethara asked. 3, Admiral. Just 3. Veltar looked at his datapad. The home world of Zephyr Prime, the agricultural world of New Haven, and the research station at Deep Point. That's all that remains of our civilization. Kethara felt something cold settle in her stomach. The Zephyrian Empire had once controlled 47 star systems. They had been explorers, scientists, artists. Their cities floated in the sky, held up by gravity manipulators. Their music could make grown adults cry with joy. Their children learned to paint with light itself. All of that was ending. "What about our allies?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. The Kaltorians pulled back to their core worlds 2 months ago. The Etherians have disappeared completely. The trade routes are empty, Admiral. Everyone is running or hiding. She couldn't blame them. When the Devourers came, they brought death. Not the quick death of war, but the slow horror of being eaten alive while still conscious. The biomechanical creatures kept their victims aware as they broke them down, feeding on their terror as much as their physical matter. Dr. Zixon approached from the science station. He was old even for a Zephyrian, his crystalline features dim with age and worry. "Admiral, I have an idea. It's desperate, but it might be our only chance." "Tell me," she said. "We've been detecting strange energy patterns from the outer spiral arm. There's a yellow star system that shows signs of technological activity. The energy signatures are different from anything we know, but they're definitely artificial." Commander Veltar looked skeptical. "You want to contact an unknown species? They could be hostile. They might be worse than the Devourers. Or they could help us," Dr. Zixon said. "Admiral, we have nothing left to lose. Our fleet is destroyed. Our worlds are defenseless. In 3 days, maybe 4, the Devourers will reach Zephyr Prime." Kethara stared at the tactical display. Red dots showed Devourer positions creeping closer like a disease spreading through their space. Blue dots showed her remaining ships, so few that she could count them without using the computer. "What kind of help could we expect from aliens we've never met?" she asked. "I don't know," the old scientist admitted. "But the energy readings suggest they have advanced technology. If they're a peaceful species, they might understand our situation. If they're aggressive, they might see the Devourers as a threat to themselves. And if they're too far away to help in time?" Dr. Zixon was quiet for a moment. "Then at least someone will know what happened to us. Someone will know that the Zephyrians existed, that we tried to stop this horror from spreading." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Kethara thought about her people, scattered across 3 worlds, waiting for death to come from the void. She thought about the children who would never grow up, the artists who would never create another masterpiece, the scientists who would never make another discovery. "Do it," she said finally. "Prepare the quantum broadcast array." Dr. Zixon nodded and moved to his station. "I'll need to include our history, our language patterns, and the nature of the threat. The transmission will be large and complex. How long will it take to reach this yellow star system?" "About 16 hours through quantum space," he said. "If anyone is listening, if they can understand our message, if they decide to help, they Would still need time to respond. We're asking for a miracle, Admiral. Then we'd better make our message count, Kithara said. Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Zixon and his team worked to create the most important message in Zephyrian history. They included mathematical concepts that any advanced species would understand. They showed images of their cities, their art, their people. They explained how the Devourers consumed everything they touched. They included star charts showing the location of their remaining worlds and tactical data about Devourer capabilities. Most importantly, they tried to convey the desperation of their situation without sounding like they were begging. The message is ready, Admiral, Dr. Zixon announced. Kithara looked around the bridge at her officers. These were good people who had served faithfully even as their civilization crumbled around them. They deserved better than this ending. Send it, she ordered. The quantum transmitter powered up with a deep thrumming sound that vibrated through the ship's hull. Energy readings spiked as the message was encoded and compressed into quantum packets. Then, with a flash of blue light visible even through the bridge windows, their plea for help shot across the galaxy at faster than light speed. Meanwhile, in a place the Zephyrians could only dream of, Dr. Lisa Morgan was finishing her night shift at the Deep Space Communications Array in New Mexico. The facility looked like a collection of giant metal dishes pointed at the sky, listening for signals from space. Lisa had been monitoring deep space radio frequencies for 12 years, hoping to find proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. She had heard plenty of natural phenomena, pulsars and quasars, the background radiation left over from the creation of the universe, but she had never heard anything that sounded artificial. That changed at 11:47 p.m. Mountain Time. Her computer screen suddenly filled with data as the array detected something impossible. The signal was clearly artificial, highly complex and unlike anything in Earth's databases. It was also incredibly powerful, suggesting it had traveled a very long distance. Paul, you need to see this, Lisa called to her supervisor, director. Paul Harrison was a calm man who had spent 20 years searching for signs of alien life. But when he saw the readings on Lisa's screen, his coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. This is it, he whispered. This is first contact. The signal continued for several minutes, packed with information that would take days or weeks to decode. But even without understanding the language, both Lisa and Paul could sense the urgency in the transmission. Whatever sent this, Lisa said. They need help. Paul was already reaching for the secure phone that connected directly to NORAD. Humanity had just received its first message from the stars, and that message was a cry for help from beings they had never met. The universe had just become a much larger and more dangerous place. Director Paul Harrison had never made a phone call that would change the course of human history before, but as he dialed the secure line to NORAD at 3 a.m, he knew this was that call. This is Director Harrison at the Deep Space Array. I need to speak to General Coleman immediately. We have a Code 7 situation. Code 7 meant first contact with alien intelligence. It was a protocol that had existed for decades, but nobody really expected to use. Within minutes, General Nancy Coleman was on the line, her voice sharp with alertness despite the early hour. Paul, please tell me you're not calling in a false alarm, she said. I wish I was, Nancy. We've got a complex artificial signal from deep space. It's definitely alien, and it's definitely a distress call. There was silence on the line for several seconds. Then General Coleman spoke in a voice that was all business. Lock down your facility. Nobody talks to anyone outside. I'm sending a team to you within the hour. Dr. Lisa Morgan watched as black SUVs and military vehicles surrounded their quiet research station. She had been analyzing the alien signal for 3 hours, and what she was finding made her stomach turn cold. The mathematics were clear even without translation. This was a civilization begging for help. The first person through the door was Dr. Kevin Brooks from MIT, a linguist who specialized in pattern recognition. He was followed by General Coleman herself, along with a team of military officers and scientists that Lisa had only seen on television. Show me what you've got, Doctor, Brooks said, sitting down at Lisa's workstation. Lisa pulled up the signal analysis on her screens. The transmission lasted 14 minutes and contains roughly 200 gigabytes of compressed data. The mathematical patterns suggest it's using prime numbers as a universal language base. Dr. Brooks studied the readouts, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he ran the data through translation programs. This is incredibly sophisticated. They're using mathematical concepts that we only discovered in the last 50 years. Can you decode it? General Coleman asked. Give me 12 hours and access to the supercomputers at Lawrence Livermore, Dr. Brooks said. If this is what I think it is, we're looking at first contact with a species that's far more advanced than us. While Dr. Brooks worked on the translation, General Coleman established a secure communication link with Washington, D.C. Within hours, the President, the Secretary of Defense, and the heads of NASA and the United Nations Space Command were all involved in emergency meetings. Lisa found herself in a conference room full of the most important people on Earth, trying to explain radio astronomy to generals and politicians. The weight of the situation was starting to hit her. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't, and their first alien neighbors were in trouble. Dr. Brooks, what's your status? President John Carter asked over the secure video link. Dr. Brooks looked tired but excited. Mr. President, I've made significant progress. The aliens call themselves Zephyrians, and they're facing what they describe as an extinction-level threat, something called the Devourers. Tell us about these Devourers, the President said. From what I can translate, they're biomechanical creatures that consume entire planets. They don't just kill populations, they literally eat the matter and use it to build more of themselves. The Zephyrians say the Devourers have already destroyed most of their civilization. General Coleman leaned forward. How do we know this isn't some kind of trap? Maybe these Zephyrians are the real threat trying to lure us out into space. Dr. Lisa Morgan spoke up. General, with respect, if they wanted to hurt us, they wouldn't need to trick us. The power requirements for this transmission are enormous. Any species that can send a signal across the galaxy could probably destroy us if they wanted to. Lisa's right, Dr. Brooks added. Besides, I've been analyzing the cultural data they included. These people are artists, scientists, philosophers. Their cities are beautiful. Their music is complex and emotional. This doesn't look like a warrior culture. President Carter was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Brooks, how long do the Zephyrians have? Based on the tactical data they included, maybe 4 days before the Devourers reach their homeworld. After that, their species will be extinct. The room fell silent. 4 days. Even if humanity wanted to help, they had barely developed faster than light travel. Their ships were slow and their weapons were primitive compared to what the aliens were describing. What would we be facing if we tried to help? General Coleman asked. Dr. Brooks pulled up tactical displays on the main screen. The Devourers appeared to be a swarm intelligence. Thousands of bioships, each one larger than our biggest spacecraft. They're described as nearly indestructible and capable of learning from each encounter. So we'd be sending our people to die against an enemy we can't defeat, General Coleman said. Maybe, said Dr. Brooks. Or maybe we'd find a way to help. The Zephyrians included detailed star charts. We know exactly where they are. Director Paul Harrison spoke for the first time in hours. Mr. President, I've been listening to space for 20 years, hoping to find proof that we're not alone. Now we know we're not alone, and our first neighbors are about to die. What does that say about us if we don't at least try to help, President? Carter looked around the room at the faces of his advisors. Some looked worried, others looked excited, and a few looked terrified. General Coleman, what ships do we have available? The UNS Defiance just finished its shakedown cruise. Captain Ryan Torres commands her. We've got the UNS Guardian under Captain Amy Foster, and the science vessel UNS Discovery with Captain Steve Mitchell, plus about 15 smaller escort ships. That's most of our deep space fleet, the President noted. Yes, sir. If we do this, we're committing nearly everything we have. The President was quiet for several minutes, staring at the star charts on the screen. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Brooks, can you prepare a response message? Yes, sir. What should it say? Tell them help is coming. General Coleman stood up quickly. Mr. President, you can't be serious. We're talking about sending our people 47 light years away to fight an enemy that has already destroyed an advanced civilization. I am serious, General. Dr. Morgan is right. If we don't help when we can, what does that make us? Besides, if these devourers are as dangerous as the Zephyrians, say they might come for us eventually anyway. Sir, our ships are barely tested. Our weapons are primitive. Our crews have never been in real combat. Then they'll learn, President Carter said firmly. General, I want every available ship prepared for departure within 48 hours. Dr. Brooks, prepare that message and send it immediately. As the meeting broke up, Lisa found herself alone with Dr. Brooks. Kevin, do you really think we can help them? Dr. Brooks looked at the translation data on his screen. I don't know, Lisa, but I know we have to try. The Zephyrians sent us everything they know about the Devourers. They gave us their history, their culture, their art. They trusted us completely, even though they've never met us. And now we're going to trust them back, Lisa said. That's what neighbors do, Dr. Brooks replied. 2 hours later, the most powerful transmitter on Earth sent a message toward the Zephyrian homeworld. It was simple and direct, translated into the mathematical language the aliens had used. Dr. Carol Hayes, the linguist who had worked with Dr. Brooks to compose it, had argued for something more complex, but Dr. Brooks insisted on keeping it short. The message contained just 4 words that would echo across the galaxy and change everything. Hold on. Help coming. In the Zephyrian star system, Admiral Keithera was preparing for her species' final battle when the response arrived. The message was detected by their deep space monitors and immediately transmitted to the celestial dawn. Dr. Zixon stared at his screen in disbelief. Admiral, we're receiving a response from the yellow star system. What does it say? Keithera asked. The old scientist's crystalline features brightened for the first time in months. It says they're coming to help us. For the first time since the Devourers had appeared, Admiral Keithera allowed herself to hope. Somewhere across the galaxy, strangers had heard their cry for help and decided to answer. She didn't know who these aliens were or what they could do against the Devourers, but for the first time in months, her people were not alone. Captain Ryan Torres stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance and watched the stars change as his ship dropped out of hyperspace. After 47 days of travel, the human fleet had finally reached Zephyrian space. What they found there made his stomach turn cold. Dear God, whispered Lieutenant Jake Murphy from the sensor station. Captain, you need to see this. The main screen showed a solar system that looked like it had been through a meat grinder. Where planets should have been, there were only debris fields. Asteroid belts that had once been worlds drifted in broken orbits around a dying star. The destruction was complete and terrible. How many systems like this have we passed? Torres asked. 17, sir, Murphy replied. Every single one stripped clean. No life signs, no artificial structures, nothing. Captain Amy Foster's voice came over the communication system from the UNS Guardian. Ryan, are we sure we're in the right place? This looks like a graveyard. According to the star charts, we're exactly where we should be, Torres replied. The Zephyrians said most of their territory was already gone. I guess we're seeing what that means. Dr. Ellen Price, the fleet's xenobiologist, studied the sensor readings from her station. Captain, whatever did this was thorough. They didn't just destroy these worlds, they consumed them. The debris pattern suggests the planets were systematically broken down and harvested. Torres felt a chill run down his spine. The human fleet consisted of 18 ships and barely 3,000 people. If the Devourers could do this to entire solar systems, what chance did humanity have? All ships, maintain formation and proceed to the coordinates of Zephyr Prime, he ordered. Stay alert for any signs of enemy activity. The fleet moved deeper into Zephyrian space, passing the bones of a once great civilization. Torres tried to imagine what these systems had looked like before the Devourers came. Cities floating in space, beautiful worlds with purple skies and crystal mountains, all described in the alien message. Now there was only death and emptiness. Captain, I'm detecting a ship on long-range sensors, Murphy announced. It's small and appears to be damaged. Zephyrian? Torres asked. Unknown design, sir. But it's moving away from something much larger. Torres felt his pulse quicken. Show me. The screen shifted to show a sleek ship with graceful curves that seemed to flow, like water. It was beautiful, but parts of its hull were torn open and leaking atmosphere. Behind it, gaining fast, was something that looked like a mechanical spider the size of a city block. That's got to be a devourer ship, Dr. Price said. Look at those biomechanical components. All ships, battle stations, Torres ordered. Amy, take the Guardian and intercept that devourer. We need to save that alien ship. On our way, Captain Foster replied. The UNS Guardian broke formation and accelerated toward the damaged Zephyrian vessel. Torres watched as his friend prepared to engage an enemy that had destroyed an entire civilization. The Guardian was humanity's most powerful warship, but against something that could eat planets, it looked very small. Captain Foster is engaging the devourer, Murphy reported. She's firing kinetic rounds and plasma torpedoes. Torres held his breath as he watched the battle on his screens. The Guardian's weapons struck the devourer ship, tearing chunks from its biomechanical hull. The alien vessel responded by extending tentacle-like appendages that tried to grab the human ship. The devourer is damaged and withdrawing, Murphy announced. Captain Foster is moving to assist the alien vessel. Torres felt relief wash over him. Their weapons worked against the devourers. Maybe humanity had a chance after all. Sir, the alien ship is hailing us, the communications officer announced. Put them through, Torres ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the interior of the Zephyrian ship. Torres got his first look at an alien being and was surprised by how graceful and beautiful they appeared. The creature had crystalline features that seemed to glow with internal light, and its large eyes held an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. Unknown vessel. I am Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian patrol ship Morning Star, the alien said through a translation device. You have saved our lives. May I ask who you are? Torres stepped forward. I am Captain Ryan Torres of the United Nations Space Command. We received your distress signal and came to help. The alien's crystalline features brightened visibly. You are the ones who sent the message. You actually came. Veltar paused, and Torres could see emotions playing across the alien's face. Captain Torres, you must understand. No one comes when we call for help anymore. Everyone runs from the devourers. We don't run, Torres said simply. But why? Veltar asked. We are strangers to you. You owe us nothing. Why would you risk your people for us? Torres thought about that question for a moment. It was something he had wondered about during the long journey through hyperspace. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally. Veltar stared at him in silence for several seconds. Then the alien did something that Torres somehow understood was a smile, even though the expression was nothing like a human smile. Captain Torres, I must take you to Admiral Keth Ara immediately. She needs to meet the people who answered our call. 2 hours later, Torres found himself aboard the Celestial Dawn, the Zephyrian flagship. The ship was unlike anything human engineers had ever built. The corridors seemed to flow like living things, and the walls gave off a soft, warm light. Everything was graceful and beautiful, even the purely functional areas. Admiral Keth Ara was waiting for him in what appeared to be a council chamber. She was tall even by Zephyrian standards, and her crystalline features held an authority that reminded Torres of the best commanders he had served under. Captain Torres, she said, through her translation device, I am Admiral Keth Ara, commander of what remains of the Zephyrian Defense Force. Commander Veltar tells me that you drove off a devourer ship. Yes, ma'am. My people are experienced at fighting. But you have never fought the devourers, Keth Ara said. They learn from every encounter, they adapt. The ship you damaged will share that information with the entire swarm. Torres felt a chill. How many ships are in the swarm? Thousands, Keth Ara replied. Captain Torres, I must ask you something, and I need you to be honest. How many ships did your people send? 18 ships, Admiral. About 3,000 people total. Keth Ara was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke in a voice filled with sadness. Captain, I appreciate what you have done. The fact that you came at all is more than we dared hope. But 18 ships cannot stand against the Devourer swarm. You should take your people and leave while you still can. With respect, Admiral, we didn't come this far to run away, Torres said. We came to help, and that's what we're going to do. You don't understand, Cathara said, her voice rising. The Devourers will be here in less than 2 days. They will bring everything they have. This will be the final battle for my species. Then we'll fight that final battle with you, Torres, replied Dr. Ellen Price, who had been quietly observing the conversation, stepped forward. Admiral, we may not have many ships, but we have something the Devourers haven't seen before. Our technology is different from yours. Our tactics are different. Maybe that will give us an advantage. Cathara looked at the two humans standing in her council chamber. These strange aliens had traveled across the galaxy to help people they had never met. It was beyond her understanding, but she could see the determination in their eyes. Very well, she said finally. If you insist on staying, then we will plan together. But I must warn you, Captain Torres, the Devourers do not just kill, they consume. If they capture any of your people, those people will remain conscious while being broken down and absorbed. It is not a good death. Admiral, Torres said, my people have a saying. Better to die on your feet than live on your knees. We're not going anywhere. As the human and Zephyrian officers began planning their defense, neither species fully understood what they were beginning. The Zephyrians could not comprehend beings who would risk everything for strangers. The humans could not understand a galaxy where helping others was considered unusual. But both species were about to learn that sometimes the most impossible victories come from the most unlikely alliances. The combined human and Zephyrian fleet hung in space around Zephyr Prime, like a thin shield protecting 3 billion lives. Captain Ryan Torres stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance and watched the tactical display show their defensive positions. 18 human ships and 43 damaged Zephyrian vessels against an enemy that had consumed half the galaxy. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace distortions, Lieutenant Jake Murphy announced. Multiple contacts bearing 27 Mark V. Torres felt his mouth go dry. How many? I count at least 3,000 ships, sir, possibly more. Dr. Ellen Price looked up from her science station where she had been working with Zephyrian researchers for the past day. Captain, I think we found something important. The Devourers use quantum entanglement to coordinate their attacks. If we can disrupt that connection, they might become vulnerable. Explain, Torres said. Dr. Mordeth and I analyzed the biomechanical samples from the ship Captain Foster damaged. The Devourers share a collective consciousness through quantum links. Take away that shared mind and they become individual creatures operating alone. Torres looked at the tactical display showing thousands of enemy contacts. What would we need to do? We modify our communication arrays to broadcast a quantum disruption signal, but we'd need to get close to their command ship to make it work. How close? Dr. Price exchanged glances with the Zephyrian scientist. Very close, sir. Close enough that whoever delivers the signal probably won't make it back. Before Torres could respond, Admiral Cathara's voice came over the communication system. All ships, prepare for battle. The Devourers have arrived. Torres looked at the main screen and felt his heart stop. The enemy fleet was emerging from hyperspace like a plague of mechanical locusts. Each Devourer ship was the size of a city, covered in biomechanical tentacles and weapon pods that pulsed with organic life. At the center was something that defied description, a ship so massive it had its own gravity field. That must be their command vessel, Dr. Price whispered. Captain Foster, are you seeing this? Torres asked over the comm. Roger that, Ryan. Amy Foster's voice was steady, but he could hear the tension underneath. My people are ready. Just tell us where you want us. Captain Steve Mitchell's voice joined the conversation from the UNS Discovery. Science vessel Discovery standing by. We've loaded the quantum disruptors into our torpedo tubes. Torres made a decision that would define the rest of his life. Amy, take the Guardian and the escort ships. Form a defensive line between the Devourers and the planet. Steve, stay with the Zephyrian ships and wait for my signal. What about you? Captain Foster asked. I'm taking the Defiant straight at their command ship. There was silence on the communication channel for several seconds. Then Admiral Cathara's voice cut through. Captain Torres, that is suicide. You cannot survive such an attack alone. Maybe not, Torres replied. But if Dr. Price is right, breaking their coordination might give the rest of you a chance. The Devourer fleet began moving toward the planet in a formation that looked like a closing fist. The smaller bioships spread out to surround the defenders, while the massive command vessel moved forward like a predator approaching wounded prey. All ships engage, Torres ordered. The battle began with a fury that shook space itself. Captain Foster's Guardian led the human ships in a desperate charge against the Devourer line. Kinetic rounds and plasma torpedoes lit up the darkness as human weapons tore into biomechanical hulls. The Zephyrians fought with elegant precision, their energy weapons carving through Devourer ships like light through crystal. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. Torres watched his friends fight and die as he pushed the Defiance toward the enemy command ship. The massive vessel grew larger on his screen until it filled his entire view. Its surface writhed with organic components and mechanical parts that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Sir, we're taking heavy fire, Murphy reported as the ship shook around them. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Life support is failing, in sections 3 through 6. Keep us moving, Torres ordered. How close do we need to be, Dr. Price? 2,000 meters, sir. But Captain, at that range their defensive systems will tear us apart. Torres looked around his bridge at the officers who had followed him across the galaxy. These were good people who believed in doing what was right, even when it meant dying, for strangers. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. We're about to make history. In a few minutes, everyone in the galaxy is going to know that humanity doesn't abandon its friends. The Defiance shuddered as Devourer weapons tore through its armor. Sparks flew from control panels and the lights flickered as power systems failed. But the ship kept moving forward. 1,000 meters, sir, Murphy called out. Launch the Quantum. Disruptors, Torres ordered. The modified torpedoes shot from the Defiance toward the command ship, but before they could reach their target, tentacle-like appendages reached out from the Devourer vessel and crushed them like insects. Torpedoes destroyed, sir, Murphy reported. Torres felt despair wash over him. They had come so far, and sacrificed so much only to fail at the last moment. But then Dr. Price spoke up from her station. Captain, I can modify our communication array to broadcast the disruptor signal directly, but I'd need to channel all our remaining power through the transmitter. Do it, Torres said without hesitation. Sir, that will leave us defenseless. We won't have power for weapons or shields. Dr. Price, if this doesn't work, weapons and shields won't matter anyway. The scientist's fingers flew over her controls as she rerouted power from every system on the ship. The Defiance went dark except for emergency lighting as every EARG of energy flowed into the quantum transmitter. 500 meters, Murphy announced. The Devourer command ship loomed over them like a mechanical mountain. Torres could see individual, biomechanical components moving across its surface, and he realized with horror that some of them had once been living beings from conquered worlds. Transmitting now, sir, Dr. Price announced. The quantum disruptor signal shot out from the Defiance at the speed of light. It struck the command ship and spread through the quantum network that connected every Devourer in the fleet. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Devourer ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began operating independently. Some collided with each other. Others stopped moving entirely as their shared consciousness was severed. It's working, Dr. Price shouted. The quantum network is collapsing. But their victory came at a price. Without power for shields or engines, the Defiance was helpless as the command ship's weapons targeted them. Torres watched as energy beams converged on his ship. All hands brace for impact, he ordered. The beam struck the Defiance and tore through its hull like paper. The bridge filled with fire and smoke as systems exploded around them. Torres felt the deck tilt beneath his feet as his ship began to break apart. Through the chaos, he heard Captain Foster's voice over the damaged communication system. Ryan, We're moving to assist. Hold on. Negative, Amy, Torres replied. Press the attack while they're confused. This is our chance. Those were the last words Captain Ryan Torres spoke. The Defiance exploded in a ball of plasma that lit up the battlefield like a new star. But his sacrifice was not in vain. Without their shared consciousness, the Devourer fleet fell into chaos. Captain Foster led the combined human and Zephyrian ships in a fierce assault that drove the confused enemy back. For the first time in their history, the Devourers were forced to retreat. They left behind hundreds of destroyed ships and the wreckage of their once invincible coordination. Admiral Cathara watched the enemy fleet disappear into hyperspace and felt something she had never experienced before. A human had died to save her people, asking for nothing in return except the chance to do what was right. In that moment, she understood that humanity was unlike any species the galaxy had ever known. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Cathara stood in the memorial garden on Zephyr Prime and watched human and Zephyrian engineers working side by side to rebuild what the Devourers had damaged. The sight filled her with an emotion she had no name for in her own language. Captain Amy Foster approached through the crystal pathways, carrying a small box in her hands. She had been promoted to Admiral after Captain Torres's sacrifice, making her the senior human officer in Zephyrian space. Admiral Cathara, Foster said through her translation device. I wanted to give you this personally. She opened the box to reveal a small piece of metal, twisted and scarred by plasma fire. This is from the Defiance, from Ryan's ship. He would have wanted your people to have it. Cathara took the metal fragment and held it carefully. Admiral, Foster, I must confess something. When your Captain Torres said he came here because it was the right thing to do, I did not understand. In our experience, no species helps another without expecting payment. And now? Foster asked. Now I am beginning to understand that humans are different from any species we have encountered. You risked everything to save strangers. Captain Torres died for people he had never met. This is not normal behavior in our galaxy. Foster smiled, an expression that Cathara was learning to recognize. Maybe that's what the galaxy needs more of, people willing to help just because it's right. Dr. Ellen Price joined them in the garden, her face bright with excitement. Admiral Foster, you need to see what we've discovered working with the Zephyrian scientists. She led them to a laboratory where human and alien researchers were examining captured Devourer technology. Dr. Mordeth, the elderly Zephyrian scientist, looked up from his workstation. Admirals, we have made a remarkable discovery, he said. The Devourers were not always as they are now. Deep in their biomechanical components, we found traces of organic DNA from dozens of different species. What does that mean? Foster asked. Dr. Price pulled up a holographic display showing molecular structures. We think the Devourers started as a single species that developed the ability to absorb and integrate other life forms. Over millions of years, they became a collective organism made up of thousands of different species. But the quantum disruption Captain Torres used broke that collective consciousness, Dr. Mordeth added. Now they are operating as separate entities instead of one unified mind. Cathara studied the data. Are you saying we can turn them back into individual species? Possibly, Dr. Price said. But it would require a much larger quantum disruption field than we used in the battle. We would need to coordinate multiple fleets across several star systems. That sounds like a job for an alliance, Foster said. Over the following weeks, word of humanity's intervention spread throughout the galaxy. The story of 18 human ships traveling across space to help a dying alien civilization became legend. Species that had never heard of Earth began to take notice. The first to arrive was Ambassador Trayvon of the Kaltorian Trade Federation. The Kaltorians were a practical species that valued profit above all else. Trayvon expected to find a powerful military empire looking to expand its territory. Instead, he found Captain Steve Mitchell helping Zephyrian children learn to use human communication devices. The human officer was sitting on the ground, patiently, showing a young Zephyrian how to adjust the translation settings. Captain Mitchell, Trayvon said through his translator. I am Ambassador Trayvon. I have come to negotiate terms for your assistance to the Zephyrians. Mitchell looked up in confusion. Terms? I'm sorry, Ambassador, but I don't understand. Payment, Trayvon explained. Mining rights, trade agreements, territorial concessions. What do your people want in exchange for your military support? Mitchell stood up and brushed dust from his uniform. We don't want anything, Ambassador. We came here to help, not to make a profit. Trayvon stared at the human for several seconds. That is impossible. No species provides military aid without compensation. Well, humans do, Mitchell said simply. The Kaltorian ambassador spent 3 days on Zephyr Prime trying to understand human motivations. He watched human engineers teaching Zephyrians to repair their ships. He saw human doctors treating wounded aliens without asking for payment. He observed human children playing with Zephyrian youngsters despite the language barrier. When he left, Trayvon sent a message back to his government that changed everything. The humans are not conquerors, he wrote. They are something we have never seen before. They help because they believe it is right to help. More species began to arrive. The Etherian Collective sent scholars to study human philosophy. The Void. Dwellers who had not spoken to outsiders for centuries sent a delegation to meet the beings who fought for strangers. Each species arrived expecting to find a typical galactic power, motivated by expansion and profit. Instead, they found humans teaching alien children to read, sharing their technology freely and asking for nothing in return. Dr. Lisa Morgan arrived from Earth aboard the research vessel UNS Endeavour. She had insisted on coming to see the results of humanity's first contact with alien life. What she found exceeded her wildest dreams. Amy, this is incredible, she said, standing in the new joint research facility where humans and Zephyrians work together. Look what we've accomplished in just 2 months. Admiral Foster nodded. The Zephyrians have shared their gravity manipulation technology with us. We've given them our manufacturing techniques. Together, we're building ships that are better than anything either species could create alone. And it's not just technology, Dr. Morgan observed. Look at the cultural exchange. Human music is becoming popular on Zephyr Prime. Zephyrian art is appearing in galleries on Earth. The greatest change, however, was happening throughout the rest of the galaxy. Species that had never cooperated before began to work together, inspired by the example of the Human-Zephyrian Alliance. The Kaltorians started offering humanitarian aid alongside their trade agreements. The Etherians began sharing their scientific knowledge with younger civilizations. Even the reclusive void dwellers opened their borders to refugees from devourer attacks. 6 months after the battle, Admiral Foster stood before a gathering of representatives from 47 different species. The meeting was being held aboard the new joint space station that orbited between Earth and Zephyr Prime. We call this the Terran-Zephyrian Alliance, she announced. But it's more than just an agreement between 2 species. It's a new way of thinking about how civilizations can work together. Ambassador Trayvon, who had become an unlikely ally, stood to address the assembly. The humans have shown us that strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation. Not from taking, but from giving. The alliance grew rapidly. Species that had been enemies for centuries began to work together. Trade routes that had been closed for generations reopened. Scientific discoveries that would have taken decades were achieved in months through cooperation. But the greatest achievement was yet to come. Using the combined technology of dozens of species, the Alliance launched Operation Restoration. A fleet of 3,000 ships from 30 different civilizations worked together to deploy quantum disruption fields across 7 star systems. The effect was everything Dr. Price had hoped for. Devourer bioships began to separate back into their original species. Beings that had been absorbed into the collective consciousness for millions of years suddenly found themselves individual again. Many of these restored species were confused and frightened. They had no memory of their original civilizations, but the Alliance was ready for them, offering medical care, counseling, and new homes on worlds that welcomed them. Admiral Kethara stood on the observation deck of the Alliance flagship and watched as former devourer creatures were welcomed aboard rescue ships. Beings that had been monsters just days before were now refugees seeking help. It's hard to believe, she said to Admiral Foster, who stood beside her. "What is?" Foster asked. "A year ago, my species was dying. Now we're part of something larger than we ever imagined. And it all started because you answered our call for help." Foster smiled. "That's what friends do, Kethara. They help each other." As the two admirals watched, a small Zephyrian child ran up to a human engineer and offered him a flower made of crystallized light. The human knelt down and accepted the gift with a smile that needed no translation. In that moment, both leaders understood that they were witnessing the birth of something new in the galaxy. Not an empire built on conquest, but a community built on cooperation. Not a civilization that demanded tribute, but one that offered help. The galaxy would never be the same, and it all began with a simple message sent across the void. "Hold on. Help is coming."